We had a light night in the NHL last night, but we have some things to discuss. Brad Marchand taking himself off of Twitter.
He did again?
Yeah, he did. He did that. Apparently, he did it. He said that he didn't want to pay for the blue check mark, but I think that was the Marchand troll. It was more like he wants to focus on the playoffs and not focus on like the stuff in the ether, which is fine. That's cool. Okay, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers, the GM. So he's not even a member of the Jets. He's just out there in the ether too, technically. And the Jets made a trade yesterday. They traded a receiver of theirs, Elijah Moore, who was a second-round pick. He had trouble connecting with Zach Wilson, but without Zach Wilson, he did really well. And he's got a lot of talent. He's not super fast, but he's a good route runner, sort of a good inside receiver, if you know what I mean, and very talented. So what the Jets do, they trade him. They traded that in the third for like the 42nd overall pick, and everybody's like, oh, look, they moved up in the second round. It's like, yeah, that pick won't even be the Jets. They're going to be trading that to Green Bay, probably with a first. And that's what they're, haggling over now. And it just kind of angers me because they've kept another receiver who I don't think is going to get dropped in Corey Davis.
They're saying Corey Davis might get bought, might get cut for cap reasons.
I don't think he's going to, though, because Rodgers likes him, and Rodgers has spoken highly of him.
Well, this is okay. Just to
that's the problem there. We'll see if that happens, Mike.
Just to extrapolate from this, because Buffalo is looking for receivers right now, and it sounds like the Jets, the Bills, and Kansas City are all talking about the same 2 or 3 receivers. They're either talking about going in the draft and drafting some kid from Ohio State who's running a 4.3 40, or but Kansas City or Buffalo would have to move up, or well-known names like Odell Beckham Jr. and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, Rodgers mentioned Beckham in his wish list.
Yeah,
so
I know.
I don't know if that means anything. All I know is that Lazard was on the wish list and he signed, and I'm waiting for Mercedes Lewis and Randall Cobb to sign. So, and they traded more, and then they get rid of somebody else as well, Russ, the Jets, or am I imagining things?
No, you're imagining, but they did pick up McCall Hardman from
that was they picked up. Okay, yeah.
Right. And look, that's their speedster. They don't need another speedster because he runs like 23 miles per hour on a treadmill. Like, he's fast.
Yeah,
so,
I do that too.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, that's a good pickup. So, the right now, like, all the moving around of pieces and on the board in the NFL is bizarre. It's like, Juju Smith-Schuster signs with the Patriots. Oh, who's going to throw him the ball? It's not going to be Mac Jones because he can't get the ball out of his hand most of the time.
But listen, Belichick likes Mac Jones.
I know. I'm just saying, after that rookie year, he really has. And, all these weapons in Miami and one good hit on Tua, and their season is toast. Then you could say that for most. Now, here's the interesting thing, and then we'll get off football and we'll start talking hockey, of course. Lamar Jackson came out yesterday and said, I don't need all guaranteed money, but I'm done with the Ravens. Okay.
Right.
Do you buy that he's done with the Ravens?
No.
Neither do I.
Only because, like you had said, there's like this sort of collusionary tactic going on with nobody even talking to him, it seems. And so the Ravens are going to end up getting him back, and they'll just franchise him.
Well, they can't. Well, they already did the provisional franchise.
Yeah, but I don't know if does that run through a season, or do you have to put another tag on him?
No, you don't have to put another tag on him. Like, if he agrees to it, I think it's like a tender offer. If he agrees to it, then they just.
He'll end up agreeing to it,
right? But he's not going to, with his injury history, he's not going to sign a 1-year deal. He's probably going to go someplace else.
No, he'll probably sign a 1-year deal with the Ravens. Have to prove it again. That's
Yeah, I don't think he has anything to prove. I mean, the only thing he has to prove is to stay healthy.
Well, that's enough in this league that probably prevents him from getting the deal he wants.
I think somebody will jump. It's not going to be
the Patriots will, and if they do, I won't be happy because that makes the division even tougher.
No, I mean, if Kevin was here, Detroit has been rumored. Washington.
But they have Goff. Detroit's not moving off of Goff.
I know, but I mean, there are chess moves yet to be made in the NFL. But anyway, we'll start the show now that we have Eck here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eck.
Okay, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday. Is it? No, it's Thursday. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, March 23rd, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello, and I know what day it is.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I swear Eck didn't do well in open book tests.
I got a lot going on here, man. We're trying to catch a fox in the backyard that's at range, where we
Is the fox on the run?
No, but it's our dog. We just took pictures. My son was just taking pictures of it, and it's got mange. It's really bad. So you can put out food for it or medicines for it or something like that. But the best thing to do is to catch it. So we're getting a trap after this. I'm going to go catch a fox and then
a fox trot.
Take it into the animal shelter, welfare center around here. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, we got a lot going on. So the date's not that important, Mike. You know, it's really not.
No, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not.
Keep telling
anyway, let's give the Buzztron it's props for picking the Penguins over the
one right game.
It's really well. That was there were only 2 games last night. I got both of them right. So
this is typical Penguins that I did mention. I didn't know if they were going to win that game yesterday. I knew Colorado was the favorite, and I get that. But this is what the Penguins do, right? I said they win 3 in a row, they lose 3 in a row.
And they knew this is a really important game for them. And you have it's Crosby versus his buddy, that whole thing is. So to me, this was like when you would see Crosby step up, which he did. You would see Crosby find another level. There's a lot of Penguin players that have another level, and when it gets tough to boot, that's why it's tough to say they're not going to make the playoffs. Like they're going to find a way to make the playoffs. They're that kind of a team. So I just really find it hard to believe they win. And he's now I think the first player to score 30 goals in the NHL is an 18-year-old and a 35-year-old or something like that.
He's the first one to do that. He's tied Mario for most 30-goal seasons with the Penguins. I just have to tell you, I mean, again, I don't – and I didn't play at any kind of level of hockey, but just trying to take a a backhand the way he did from that distance to have that much power behind it is crazy. Like I'll tell you, growing up, the best backhand was Phil Esposito by far. He used it in the crease. There's no way Phil ever scored it from the distance that Crosby.
Yeah, I know. And the backhand's a hard shot to stop as a goalie. Like it doesn't have a normal trajectory.
It's almost like a knuckleball.
Yeah, you can't read how it's coming off the stick. Like that's the big thing. Like where it comes off the stick is not like a normal shot comes off the end of a stick, where backhand doesn't always come off the end of the stick. It's tough. It's tricky, and and Crosby he's got one of the best. I mean, he and Patrick Kane has a really good one too. Obviously, we've seen Patrick Kane score with it many times in the past too. But those two guys definitely have perfected. When I was a kid, I remember Rick McLeish being the guy that was from in Philly who had the backhand that was killer. But
Rick McLeish,
but Espo was definitely up there.
Espo, I think, had the best that I had ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to say that's probably true. Although Crosby's is right there.
I mean, Crosby's from a difference in 20-something, 30-something, maybe even 40 now, 40-something years later.
Yeah.
Is 40. Showing how athletes are different and everything. Sure.
No question. The other kind of big news today is.
Well, let me just extend on that for a second.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And then we'll get to, because there's some things happening that I think we need to talk about. But the Penguins now with that win are at 80 points. They move back into a playoff spot. They're in the second wild card, and you got the race. It's down to 3 teams for the 2 spots. Islanders 82, Penguins 80, Florida 79. Florida and the Penguins both have a game in hand on the Islanders. The Florida's game in hand is going to be used up tonight, and they're hosting the Leafs. Can't say any big. It's probably their biggest game of the year, so I'm sure they're going to be worked up, and all 6,000 fans in Sunrise will be all enthused as well. But really, I mean, I look at this race. And I give Florida the advantage. And if Pittsburgh gets goaltending on a Jari, I question the Islanders being able to win one of the spots based on their offense.
It'll come down to the last day or two. I do want to read a quote because I think Eck will appreciate this. So this is from Jeff Carter last night. I couldn't care less about what you guys write, to be completely honest. Now, this is the Jeff Carter that I know, and this is why, if anybody wonders why I'm always negative about Jeff Carter, because he's been like this for his entire career. And but here's the thing. Like, I get it that Pittsburgh's been overly tough on their team this year. But honestly, with the season he's had, Eck, how does he expect anybody to write anything positive about him?
Oh man, yeah, we got to get started on the Jeff Carter thing. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a rat hole. But I'll go down it a little bit. Yeah, that is the Jeff Carter we know and love. And my memories of him are just like he was just impossible to deal with. And he was the best explanation I think I ever heard anybody say was one of the writers from Philly, who I'm not sure who it was at the time, because it was a while ago, but he also was just one of those general sports writers from the Inquirer. So he covered the Phillies, he covered the Eagles, he covered the Flyers. He was just, be there at different, write special columns or whatever. Said that Jeff Carter was the closest thing that he'd ever interviewed in hockey to an ace baseball pitcher. He said that he said the ace baseball pitcher was so quirky and had his own and was just obnoxious and wouldn't tell you anything and was just, didn't want to talk to you and sometimes wouldn't talk to you at all. Steve Carlton or whatever. These guys Jeff Carter just had that attitude. And, he was.
I'll tell you the one story. I think you were with us too at the Winter Classic at Citizens Bank. So we were told, hey, get down there at 12:15. That's when the locker room's open. You can go down there. So we go down there, and Carter looks up and he goes, "It's closed. It's not open." So we all leave, and it's not like when you're going from where the NHL area was to the locker room, it's a far walk. So we're all leaving, and Zach Hill sees us, and he goes, "Where are you going?" And we're like, "We were just told to leave the locker room. Jeff Carter says it's not open." And Zach was not amused. He was not amused. The whole crew was leaving.
Yeah, he and Richards had a definite, entitlement thing going on. Both of them. Yeah. Richards to a lesser degree than Jeff, but Richards was also just smarter, just a generally smarter person than Jeff.
Is this the Dry Island group?
It is part of the Dry Island group, yeah. And
Scotty Upshaw and
Scotty's a great guy, but
Scotty's awesome.
But this is a totally this group is just it was crazy. Richards was more obnoxious sometimes because he was a little bit smarter, where Carter, you just didn't think he was getting it at all sometimes. So it was hard for me. I think I've told the story before, when I covered Carter at the All-Star game, when my first All-Star game I went to, he was the only Flyer representing it. And I was down there, and when I was down there, I'm like, yeah, it must be fun to play with these guys again, And he said, I've never played with these guys again. I'm like, well, no, Crosby and, these guys, you played in 2008 with them at the World Championship. He's like, no, I never played with these guys.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I actually liked Richards better than Carter as far as.
I like Richards better than Carter, but Richards could also be nasty. Neither both those guys. And I remember when Hitchcock got fired in Philadelphia, I remember talking to Hitch the day after on the phone, and because he was we were pretty close. He'd had me to breakfast a couple times, stuff like that. And Hitch just saying, I just don't get these kids. I don't get them. I can't. I'm trying. He's like, I just don't get them. I don't get the entitlement that's on these kids. And that was, he wasn't directly pointing to Rich.
No, but there was a feeling of that for sure.
Absolutely. He's like,
that's why the Flyers made the trade they made.
They did, and people were all shocked by it. But it wasn't. Ed Snyder just didn't like him.
That was crazy too. That was a crazy day because I was at the draft in Minnesota, and we had to wait in the stands because they didn't have everybody on the stage yet for us to interview. They have their 7-8 guys like they do on the boat or whatever.
Yeah,
we were in some sort of auditorium somewhere. I don't remember where we were. Maybe it was even the XL Center, and we're sitting in the seats, and all of a sudden, I'm next to Steve Wino, and he gets a text, and he looks at me, and I'm like, "What? What's the text?" He goes, "Look at this." And it was the trade, and that the Flyers had acquired the 8th overall pick in this trade. And I looked at him and I said, Sean Couturier is on that stage. I'm talking to him first.
Right.
That's about where I have him ranked. And that's what I told Steve.
That's what they got for him, in the end of the day, they got
2011 draft in Minnesota. Yeah.
They ended up getting Braden Shen in that deal as well for Richards, and then to LA at the time. So it was and then Carter went famously to Columbus,
for a day. No, it was 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then
no. He went into the season. It was in February of the next year that he got traded.
Oh, was it? I didn't think it went that far.
It was pretty far. It wasn't like it definitely was like about not even half a season. I don't think.
Yeah, it wasn't a half a season.
But I remember, and my famous, and he was such a jerk there, and
39.
Well, they didn't like him there. I can tell you that.
39 games.
And he forces his way out of there, gets traded back to his buddy Richards in L.A.
Yeah.
And then people always they're like, oh, the Flyers traded Richards and Carter to L.A. and they won a Stanley Cup. No, that's not what happened at all. But and then Carter scored famously like an overtime goal, and Pierre LeBrun was behind me. I've said the story before, but it's just worth saying again. He said to Carter, he's like, after the hard year you've had, this must be very rewarding for you to score this overtime goal in the NHL Finals. And I afterwards, I looked at Pierre like, hard year he's had. Like he was a jerk in two cities, worked his way out of it, and ends up here. Yeah, it's great that he got he scored the goal he got here, but man,
it's an ordeal to live in Columbus. Come on.
That was on him, man. That wasn't like, geez.
Hey, well, okay. I'm not excusing Jeff Carter's attitude, but the way the Flyers did him and Richards and James Van Riemsdyk ugly by trading them. Remember, this is before the CBA allowed this rule change. They agreed to no trade clauses or no move clauses that were grandfathered in when the new contract kicked into effect, and the Flyers, before the no move clause dropped, traded these guys.
Well, you have no idea what was going on.
I know.
Richards and Carter. You have no idea.
No, I do. But
I mean, even stuff that was printed, I know stuff way beyond that.
That's what I've told you guys these stories. But
I'll leave it to my fertile imagination. But I'm just saying the Flyers organization at that time did that numerous times. And I mean, honestly, that's sort of a backstab to some of these players. And now you can't do that.
They didn't want to trade them, Mike. It's like they didn't want to trade them. I mean, but like they had to trade them.
They had to trade them.
It wasn't like it was. No, Van Breet, he's a different. JVR is a different story. But these guys are.
I know.
These guys were Ed Snyder made them trade them, and it had to do with charity events and all kinds of things that were beyond that we don't want to get into. But it's like they were. It was not like they had no choice. Now
JVR, that's a different story. Maybe that wasn't the greatest thing. The only thing we could say about JVR in that portion of his career was he was great in the 2010 playoffs, and he never regained that.
Right. Yeah, he was not a Flyer type player.
Right.
I mean, he was amazing in that playoffs in 2010. Yep. But he just couldn't get back at all. You're right, and that in that trade, that was a crazy day too when they traded him for Luke Shen. That was nuts.
Now, a couple things here because Connor McDavid made a couple, and I think it was before last. They made some comments about. And we talked about the World Baseball Classic, and I think it was an overblown event, and not worthy of major league players having to risk injury to play. But of course, these players love it. Like in the NHL, the players love going to the Olympics, and I get that. But honestly, unless it's on the grounds that the NHL wants them to go to the Olympics, I'm all for them never going to the Olympics again. If the IOC treats the NHL like they treat the NBA, then fine. Then it's an event that the NHL gets something out of. But McDavid was bemoaning the fact that they're not having best on best competitions for one reason or another. And if you saw the announcement that came out yesterday about the IIHF saying that they're going to extend the not allowing Russia and Belarus to be part of any international events.
Yeah,
you're probably talking the next Olympics in 2026 that that Russia's not involved, so you're not going to get best on best, and I don't think
maybe that's a while away. We don't know that yet.
It's 3 years away, and things can change internationally. But I'm telling you right now, if the IOC does not make concessions to the NHL about their players, the NHL is going to tell the IOC to go stick it where the sun don't shine.
And I heard the quote. I don't mind McDavid saying that, although. That's sort of him versus the NHL not going to the Olympics the last time. And that, I don't see how you could pick on the NHL for that one. But
no, I think that there were players who definitely definitely wanted to still go despite
Right,
all
of
the
course.
there's no
But
way.
here's my other thing, Eck. Olympics aside, because that is always best on best.
Yeah.
When the NHLers are in there. But Olympics aside, Connor McDavid, go to the Stanley Cup, you'll be playing the best on best.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. I mean, you know, you go to the Stanley Cup and you're in there against Tampa, don't worry, it's best on best. And then you'll see what you're missing. So it's like,
the problem is, Russ, it's not an individual event, and you need to have a team around you that's capable of getting to the Stanley Cup final, and he doesn't have that.
Well, listen, but again, that's a part of sports. Like,
yeah,
I don't care about manufactured best on best. Like, example, like in those golfing tournaments, they have like Tiger Woods against whatever for 8 holes. You know, it's like it's not a best on best. I mean, it's really not. Best on best is in season for the league that they're in, playing at their best, advancing in the playoffs. To me, that's best on best, or sometimes the Olympics.
I mean, ironically, the event that you attended, Eck, 7 years ago, the World Cup of Hockey.
Oh, yeah.
The most impactful thing of that entire tournament was not Team USA or Team Canada. It was the sort of made up Team North America.
We all loved it.
Everybody loved it. It'll never happen again. And that's why that event, even if they, that event is flawed. And now, I mean, right now, they may do that because they're, the NHLPA will get hockey related revenue out of it, and it'll benefit them that way. And it may happen in 2025, but it's still a flawed event. It's not.
Think about that, Mike. You're right. You're right. It's a flawed event because it's not. It's an NHL. It's an NHL All-Star game.
It is
essentially with players split up into their countries. Right. That's what it is. It's an NHL All-Star tournament with players split up in their countries, which is fine because that's what we really want to see anyway. Because most of the best players are in the NHL. There are other players in the rest of the world for sure, but if there's a 2025 tournament, if they do another one of those World Cup of Hockey in 2025. Can Russia be in there if you just use the players playing the NHL?
They're NHLers, yeah.
But don't you think people will still have a problem with that?
But you know what? The thing is, there are already Russians that are over here. So it's again, doesn't have any impact in Russia. Like the World Baseball Classic, they said yesterday, 97% of people in Japan were watching that, right?
Right.
Great. That's great for Japan, but it had no impact on Major League Baseball or baseball in America. And a lot of those players that are playing, Japanese-wise, sure, a lot of them did come from the Japanese league. Some of them were from Major League Baseball, not that many. But everybody else who was playing them is pretty much from Major League Baseball with some other players mixed in. So I don't think for this it would be a problem.
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether they'll go that way. I do know that if we see sort of the continuing backlash against Alex Ovechkin because of his association with Putin and what's going on right now in Ukraine, if I took that as a cue in terms of what they do with the World Cup, if there's still a war in Ukraine in 2025, then the Russians aren't playing. The Russians aren't participating. Right. So. I don't know if it's.
Even in the World Cup of Hockey, the Russians aren't playing. Exactly.
Yeah, no, nothing.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I agree with you. I thought you were saying that they would, but
they can't do Team Europe because that's too big.
I mean, it was pretty good. The Team Europe thing worked pretty well for the most part.
Just imagine Team North America in 2025. You would have Connor Bedard. You'd have Trevor Zegras.
Yeah.
It would be an unbelievable team to watch. But you know what the problem was, Eck? And I saw it. And again, I even felt like there was 1 or 2 unfavorable calls that went against Team North America. Yeah. But aside from that, they were making some of the veterans look bad and tough.
No, they were.
The younger guys are better. Who cares?
Yeah, and that was specifically like another really like amazing group of players. So like you had just everybody from Johnny Gaudreau to
Austin Matthews was a fourth liner on that team.
Right, and great, and honestly, if Murray doesn't get hurt, they probably win that thing. The reality is that the goaltending is what kind of let them down.
But they were making some of the veteran teams look bad, and I don't think the players like that as a whole.
The thing about it was that the other thing that I didn't like about that, and I was there, there have been 2 times in my life, I've said this before, that I just absolutely have been blown away by watching a hockey team play. One was watching that Team North America play, and the other was in the 1982 Stanley Cup Finals, when the first time I really got to see the Edmonton Oilers with Gretzky, Coffey, Messier play. When they because the way they played and the way that North American team played was a similar kind of like, holy cow, this is another level of thing to me. Because you watch so many hockey teams play the same way and play the same kind of thing, and they just played at a speed that was under both those circumstances. I just couldn't imagine the speed they were playing at.
No doubt.
But there was the nationalism aspect of it was real, like that, and to try to put these teams. That's why I said it was an all-star game, because it wasn't really a USA team versus a Canadian team, because some of the best USA players were on that under 23 team, and some of the best Canadian players were on that under 23 team. So.
But the whole thing that originated this, the whole World Baseball Classic thing, I think a lot of the hype was contrived. I think that it was contrived by the Major League Baseball because they want to make this into a signature event, and it's just not a signature event. And
that's always contrived, Mike. These are the definition of these things are contrived. I mean, don't you think?
Right, but they're also contrived, like in Japan and Mexico. I get that.
Yeah,
but the Olympics get a chance to
but in the U.S. it was, Russ.
Well, no, but there was Team Italy, and Mike Piazza was the manager, and somehow Matt Harvey was pitching on it because someone in his family is Italian that we never knew about.
He slept with an Italian model, so that made him.
And nobody's watching that in Italy.
No.
You know what I mean? They didn't care. They're out there sipping wine.
No, but it's not for the people in Italy. There's more Italians living in America than there are living in Italy. You know what I mean? That's the reality. Is like there's more Italians here.
We breed.
Right. So that was for that was all set up for like the American Italians. To get into it like that. It's really about selling TV to America.
Like if they do a Team Iceland in the World Cup of Hockey, is that really going to matter?
No, but
what will be the confusing part?
Team Sweden and Finland haven't really mattered either.
No, but hold on, Ek. You know what would be awesome? The Team Iceland, what would be awesome about it is everybody's last name ends in son. So making those jerseys
that'd be great.
Would be incredible.
I know. And I once had to do a thing where I put names on the back of jerseys for my daughter's soccer team, and I can imagine what like the kits are, how many letter A's and how many letter E's there are in Finland, because you'd run out of E's here and you always be I'm running out of E's, but can't imagine what it's like over there. I think that as much as there's two ways to look at the under 23 team in that tournament, right? There's the way I said it wasn't nationalism, but what it did do, and what we talked about with Kevin the other day, that the NHL doesn't do well, is it did sell the young stars.
Yeah, in that tournament, it did.
It did actually promote the NHL, some NHL young stars in a way that we never seen the NHL.
I can tell you that for certain, because when I was at the rookie photo shoot in Toronto that year, they were still doing it in Toronto, and that was about a month and a half before the tournament. I have a picture of a giant stand-up Team North America Connor McDavid card.
Oh yeah,
that was getting ready to print.
I think what you just said is
cool.
I think what you just said is the reason why it sold the young stars so well is because it was in Toronto.
Yeah.
You had two players in Morgan Riley and Austin Matthews who had not played a game for the Leafs yet, who were part of that team. You had Connor McDavid, who was like the uber superstar, not on Team Canada, but on Team North America, and McKinnon and Goudreau and everybody. It was just a team that was put together to succeed. And the worst thing about that tournament is that team, because of, and I think it was the round robin rules or goals.
The way it worked,
Yeah, it just sucked. I mean, it would have been great.
They were absolutely, Mike, trying to keep them away from Team Canada and Team USA.
Yes,
because just to not embarrass Team USA or Team Canada, because that there was no question, and the only way they could meet would be in the final. The way they had it set up, that was how it was set up. The only way they could meet was the final. And what I would love to see, is like if the NHL wants to do something fun, would be like a mini rematch tournament of that team versus that Team USA versus that team. Like have like a fun, like do something fun with that, because it's a game we never saw that everybody wanted to see. Like if you had a three team tournament in the next All-Star game that was in some way, shape, or form instead of an All-Star game, that you had that going, that would be fun, because that would be like put their old because their jerseys were cool too. We just put them on too and make the whole thing, just like. That would be fun, like, because that is the game that it's like a boxing match that we never saw. It feels like a boxing match that we really wanted to see. And I'll
tell you one thing, Ek. While you were busy covering the World Cup of Hockey, I was coming back from covering hockey in Canada, like some junior hockey, and I had met up with. I had stopped off in New York because the NHL was moving their offices and they were selling stuff. So I bought like this NHL pen for like $5. It was like a cross pen. They were just getting rid of promo stuff. And I bought a like a Ronald Petrovicki, I think it was Petrovicki, jersey from the World Cup of Hockey, right? I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And as I was, no, actually, you know what? I went to New York and then I was going upstate. A friend of mine heard I had that jersey and he goes, stop by my house because I want to see that jersey. And I'm like,
Yeah.
All right. So I stopped by his house, and it turns out his wife is Czech, and he goes, I want that jersey. And I'm like, you're an Islander fan. I don't think you have anything I want.
Yeah, right.
And so we go up into his, man cave, and he gives me a stick, and it's a Stefan Matteau stick, and it has the right tape, the right everything. He goes, listen, this is not the stick from the,
Game
7 goal, but it's from that series because I was at one of the practices and he was done using that stick, gave it to the security guard. Security guard gave it to me. So I took the stick. So that's what a World Cup of Hockey, the first one, the jersey was worth.
Now, if you can get Howie Rose to sign it, then
or Matteau. I haven't gotten him to sign it yet, but I will one day.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that was a great tournament. Go ahead, Mike.
Now we have to touch on this because it's sort of a lingering and ongoing issue, and the Blackhawks announced I think yesterday for their upcoming game that they are not going to wear the Pride jerseys.
Yeah.
But the Florida Panthers came out and said that they are going to wear the Pride jerseys. And
Florida Panthers are they're having a great, and they have a whole bunch of things.
Right, but here is the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is right now, and we've seen this now with the Flyers with Provorov, the Rangers who decided that they weren't going to do it, San Jose with James Reimer deciding he didn't want to wear the Pride jersey, so he was not going to take part. And now I think the Blackhawks in a way threw 3 players under the bus because they said the reason that they weren't going to do it was because Zaitsev, Kurashev, and Khudobin were all of Russian heritage.
Right.
And here where I think the NHL is going to end up going is similar to what the NFL did, because if you remember, in the wake of the Kaepernick situation, you had like the national anthems on television and you had players getting down on one knee. The NFL did not want this kind of demonstration. So what they ended up doing is they ended up having the national anthems before the games went before 1:00 when the games went live. I'm in full support of NHL teams having Pride Night, having inclusiveness and outreach to any group. That's fine. But the problem is that for every incident that you have now, like Reimer, who's he's a religious kid, that it was something he objected to, you're opening those players up to criticism, like reporters calling him a bigot. And for every person you're getting with that inclusiveness, you're taking away people who are similar in their thought process that to Reimer or to Provorov and some of these players. I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have Pride Night, but none of the players are going to be wearing Pride jerseys because they're going to take it out of the hands of the players, because every time you have an incident like this, it's a body blow to the league.
There's a lot there, Mike, what you said there. There's a lot to that. I think the Pride Nights are absolutely necessary. I think they're a phenomenal thing.
I agree.
And I know you agree. And I think that I know you're not saying that, but I think at the same time, everybody should be allowed to do, have their opinions for sure.
Right.
And you can get into the whole religions are too judgmental thing. That's a whole nother topic altogether that has nothing to do with anything. But for these players, if they have their opinions, what we're seeing right now is the NHL is not the NFL, because the NHL teams always want to do everything as a team, and therefore they're not going to wear the jerseys if one guy won't wear it.
Right.
So one guy can determine that no one wears it at all. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that is where the NHL has to be like, this is you're not a bad teammate of Reimer if you don't agree with his statement. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. I think that let Reimer not come out for warmups or whatever.
Right, but the issue here is, Zach, is that I agreed with that, and Reimer made a statement, and the Sharks made a statement, but then in the reaction to that, you had everybody piling on Reimer, like Mark Lazarus from the Athletic saying he was a bigot, and other people, and I think that's just ugly. That
is ugly. And
all right. So here's my thinking. I did have a gay Flyers fan respond when I retweeted what Mark Lazarus had put up about the Blackhawks. And I can't use some of the verbiage on here. And I understand, why he's mad. First off, look, if the Russians are worried about what's happening back home and wearing these jerseys, shouldn't the Russians be worried about wearing military night jerseys too, considering it's got a U.S. flag on it? And
somebody made that point on social media, and if not wearing pride jerseys means not wearing military jerseys, then that's fine.
Because I'm just saying, if you've got the U.S. flag on you in warm-ups, like that's that can't be beloved in Russia either.
No.
And then as far as the Reimer things, Luke Prokop, who is an outwardly gay hockey player, how would he feel if his locker were next to James Reimer?
Yeah.
That's what you have to wonder, because James Reimer could say he's not a bigot. That's fine. But James Reimer also doesn't believe in that guy's, lifestyle. So that would be an interesting thing if that ever happened, because maybe then James Reimer would change his moral view of the world.
Well, it kind of happens already. It would, but it kind of happens already, Russ, in different ways, like in some subtler ways that we don't know about. Where people are always next to people who don't have the same beliefs in them, like whether it's abortion or whatever. We get by without these problems. We realize that there are different beliefs and different things, and you can judge who's right or who's wrong as much as you want to, but at the end of the day, we all live with people. We have to work with people who don't have the same agreements with us. Same who don't agree with us. We've had family members who are like crazy Trump people or whatever. They have different sort of things. I'm not trying to do politics, but I'm just saying I love them still. Like I'm still there with them.
Right, but the thing is to expect unanimity on any issue is ridiculous.
It's wrong.
That's the whole point of this country, is that you can believe what you want to believe in. And now I'm just saying the optics here, and obviously the NHL is concerned with optics. When what is going on with these teams is popping up on conservative media, which is not where they want to be. This is like, you get the NHL gets attention from bench clearing brawls and things of that nature. It's ugly for the league. This was about outreach. This was about being more approachable to all different lifestyles, all different sexual orientations, everything. I'm all for that, but I think if you're going down the road of for every fan you get in one group, you're losing in another group, that's counterproductive. So I think in the end, what they're going to end up doing is doing sort of an NFL type of thing, and they're going to have Pride Night, they're going to have Pride jerseys. That's all, and that's all fine and good, and that's great. But I think they're going to take it out of the hands of the players, because every time they go down this road, they get something egg on their face.
I mean, I think taping the sticks and stuff like that should be that's a statement you can make.
But here's the thing with that, right? Yeah. There's always been players that have taped the sticks for warm-ups, but they never wear it in games. Curtis Gabriel, I think, is the only player I've ever seen use it in a game.
Right. And I think that there are so many levels to the NHL and so many levels to this.
So little things that players can do to make people feel more included. Like, hey, okay, I feel, good about this. My team understands me a little bit.
That's a really good point, Russ. And it is like players going to pride parades and things like that is so much more effective. I mean, than a team having to make a statement.
Sure.
And as much as, because organizations generally don't make statements. Like when you think about it, there's not I guess there's Pride Day if you work for Apple or whatever. I'm sure there is, but I'm just trying to think of things that, I'm sure there is that, but you don't hear about the people who didn't celebrate or whatever. It doesn't matter if you take this off, in my opinion, Mike, if you do this before TV or whatever, because it's still good. It's going to get out. It's just Twitter. It's going to be whoever didn't show up or whoever didn't wear the jersey or whatever. It's still going to be the same thing. I don't think it's going to matter much.
Well,
But
the thing is though, if you do that and you say, okay, the Buffalo Sabres have Pride Night and a player sits out of the warm up, then automatically, the reporters are going to be asking questions. Why did this not? You sort of have to come out before that and saying, well, this player is and then the cat's out of the bag. So that's why I'm saying you're opening yourself up to more sort of body blows when you do that. And it's like, okay, just take the players out of the equation.
The teams all routinely have nights. There's probably 5 to 7 nights every year for teams.
Some of them are stupid, some of them are political, some of them aren't. Like, it's like some of them are just like Star Wars nights or 80s nights, things like that.
Like Marvel Night. I had commented on Marvel Night. There wasn't one villain to be found on Marvel Night.
Nobody was Ultron. Come on.
No, and I'm like, how could you have just heroes? There should be at least one villain there.
I mean, the interesting thing, Russ, when you talk about the difference between like military nights and Pride nights, like one's nationalistic, one's religious, right? So there's two opposite, very different kinds of concepts of that, right? Mm-hmm. And just because you're an American doesn't mean you're like pro-America everything either. You might have the issues. Obviously, you've seen people kneeling and stuff like that too, and that's kneeling. I know that's not that they're anti-American. They're anti. I know what that all means, but I'm
sure they didn't have Military Appreciation Night in 1968 when the war in Vietnam was going on, because that
right. You weren't going to have that then. But they did that. They did have peace rallies outside.
Peace rallies, yeah.
So it's like these are all different things. Nationalism versus religion is a dangerous area. That's why our country has separation of church and state. It's like you can't mix these things together safely in any situation. And
let's just say it's involving the NHL in a debate that they don't want to be in. It's like they don't want to go down this road. They want to be inclusive. They want to be open. They want to be, progressive, and that's all fine and good. But in some instances, you're forcing people who don't want to be progressive, who just believe what they believe in, and that's why, like I keep saying, I think that they're going to take the players out of the equation here, and like I said, they'll sell.
But here's another thing with the players. Mm-hmm. So you can't always take the players out of the equation because, again, players want to be 50-50 partners with the owners. And if they're 50-50 partners with the owners, then players should be wanting to make sure the stands are full or you have more fans on these particular nights because that's going to help pay you. And a lot of times players don't want to get involved in that, yet they do want to get involved in that when there's profits.
Right. Well, and if I remember correctly,
no, you're right.
If I remember correctly, in the Philadelphia situation, there were players, I think Van Riemsdyk and a couple others, that attended events prior to the Pride Night. And
Van Riemsdyk did, and Scott Lawton. Yeah.
So, I mean, if players want to support these initiatives, like I remember when Brian Burke started I think it was the You Can Play initiative in Toronto after his son died. A lot of the players attended the gay parade in Toronto and things of that nature. And there was a lot of outreach by the organization. I think that the problem here is with the players. It's on the ice. It's before the game. And if you're going to not do that, then, if there's some people who object to wearing a U.S. military uniform, then you do what Toronto does and honor a member of the military during the TV timeout. I don't think I remember the Leafs wearing a military garb night or anything like that. So, it may have to be separation of church and state when it comes to hockey. Separate these issues from the players themselves.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with you on that. I think that's really solid. I mean, I think that it's societal. It's not just in hockey, obviously. So it's just, and the other thing that is that we're seeing here, and I a couple of friends of mine who I talked to about when this whole thing happened with Provorov, including one of a real close friend of mine, who said that, she wasn't surprised by this at all. She really had this, this is pegged as to what the kind of thing that would happen. So it didn't shock her. But she was actually happy about the fact that there was such a reaction against it. Like that, we live in a world where people think that more people are in this. It feels like more people are okay with it, or more people are comforting with it, or people are getting more comfortable with things.
I can understand the reaction against it, but it got to the point of abuse. And that was
Yeah.
the thing. It's like, it went.
Yeah, no, but that's the internet, right? That's
No. I mean, well, it's the internet, but I mean, I think there were. I mean, there were members of the media, and there were other people that maybe they expressed their opinions through social media, but it got to the point of like, okay, it's starting to get ugly here. It's starting to get, with the Russian players, it's because they're Russian Orthodox. So now you're slamming a particular religion. And, it's like, this is more, I mean, it was the Rangers, it was the Islanders and Minnesota that scrapped plans for Pride Night because of players on their team having issues with it. So it's not an isolated incident.
But if it did like Republican Party Night, there'd be a lot of players who would be fine with that, and that fans wouldn't want to know that. Like that's the other thing. And I'm not saying anything against Republicans, Mike.
No,
I'm just saying,
I get it.
You know what I mean? It's like if they stood up, it's like, okay, this is the Republican Party night, and people would wear like,
There's also something else at play here too, so we might as well throw this into the soup. The other thing that is people are sort of still really annoyed with the Blackhawks for good reason about the Kyle Beach situation. And now they're sort of using their Russian players to kind of shield this situation. And overall, this doesn't make the Blackhawks look great.
No, and I get the feeling, that there's something more there than just
right. But that's what's being put out there,
right? And
also, I mean, with the Russian,
so they're using the Russian players and what previously happened with Provorov and other teams as a shield against probably the agenda that they're afraid to express. And maybe it is because of the beach thing.
No, that's part of it, I'm sure, but I don't know if that's part of it. I shouldn't say it's part of that, sure. But what is happening is the undercurrent of Russian players so Russian players, we're all being very sympathetic to their religion. We're being like, we're saying that like, so that we're, where they're not being sympathetic to someone's orientation, we're now being sympathetic to their religion, a lot. And then at the same time that there are people who are like, well, Russian players, we're being super nice to them because what's going on in the war. And we're not like holding them accountable. We're not talking to them every night and asking them to have their opinions because we don't want them to throw out their families back in Russia to get beaten up. So it's like, there's so many levels to this thing.
This is a good quote here. Cancel culture is a cancer. It's one thing to point out bad actors, but it becomes a witch hunt. And that's where I think it gets to be overkill. You can criticize Reimer or Provorov or any of the players for them not being as open-minded as other players. But I think when he gets to the point of abusing them,
right,
then I think it's overkill. And it's like you said, they're not going to have a Republican night for it. If they had a Republican night for the NBA, nobody would show up.
But a lot of the players might.
I'm not sure about that, but in the NHL,
I'm serious. I mean, it's like there's just different kinds of Republicans. There's and there's Republicans who are about, and
there are different kinds of Democrats. It's like
responsibility. There's Republicans who are about different kinds of culture things. There's all different kinds of things like that too. So a lot of the players who make a lot of money are Republican because they care about that. So there's a bunch of different things, and it is a hard line to draw. And but the cancel culture thing, on the internet, I've never been canceled, but I've been attacked, for sure. And I could be someone could try to cancel me. Who knows? That's always a possibility. But to me, I wouldn't take it anywhere seriously. I think that the reality is the cancel culture is like we're living in the crucible. Like the reality is this mob mentality.
Mm-hmm.
On the Salem witch hunt was because a lot of people were together and they all got angry. But with the internet, that exists on a big, big scale. So that's what you naturally see. You naturally see that happening. So that's just the part of the internet. We are so young in the world of the internet and the ethics of that whole thing that our children are going to have a totally different internet than we have right now. And they'll figure out a lot of this stuff as time goes on. But we're backing up against some things that are just hitting head on,
There are kids that are 4 years old that are on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I was on there at the beginning on Prodigy and getting on the internet with my free account from the place that I work for. Yeah,
I used to steal credit card numbers to make long distance phone calls when I was a kid. I forget what it was. It wasn't even Prodigy. It was before that. So, but we thought we were doing that. I don't think we were, but it was just kind of crazy. But no one's going to cancel anyone here. The reality is, cancel culture is just I don't want to get into it.
No, it's I just felt we needed to talk about this because it continues to be a story, and I think it's going to continue to be the story, be a story for the rest of the season. And
Right.
Maybe the NHL will maybe set some guidelines, because I do think that what's going on right now it's sort of counterproductive to both communities. I think the NHL wants to be as inclusive as possible for every range of the spectrum, and the way they're handling it right now on an individual basis, I think, is sort of counterproductive. So,
but on one hand, Mike, we're talking about it. You know what I mean? And it's like the other side of
it created a conversation, and I think that's good.
Reimer and Provorov probably made more people aware of these nights than anybody did.
Well,
that's not true.
The interesting thing here, Rack, is it will be highly revealing what happens, because Provorov has got years left in his contract. James Reimer is a UFA at the end of this year. He's 34 years old. He's still a capable backup. I wonder whether he'll get a job.
Yeah, it could affect him. It could.
We'll find out.
We'll never know, because he's on the edge of getting a job anyway, right? So the reality is, like, whether if he doesn't get a job, you can't sit back and say it was just because of this.
I've been asked about it on other shows, and I basically, if I'm asked about Ivan Provorov, I talk about Ivan Provorov, the player, first, and then I say, listen, I was disappointed with what he did, but he's still a good player. I'm not going to, color my decision of that or try and cancel him just because I didn't like that he did what he did. So
he's not a bad guy. He's not a bad guy to talk to.
He's not a bad guy.
He is definitely an opinionated guy, and he has his opinion, and it wasn't shocking that he would take a stand on something that he believed in.
But he did start all of this.
Yeah. But I think that I don't know. That is interesting, that if he didn't do it, would Reimer have done it? That's the other thing I thought about. Like,
it started down that road. Yeah,
it made it acceptable, and a lot of teams ended up canceling it altogether. That I think is not the greatest solution. Canceling it all, like what Florida's doing is that Florida went all in, like they went completely all in, and they've got a whole bunch.
And I'll tell you this: San Jose planned on going all in. Like they really had done a great job. Yeah, they had done a great job on Twitter. They were pretty expansive with what they were doing before that happened.
Right, but you do have to consider the market, and San Jose had to. I mean, what I'm saying?
It's up to ownership. Ownership doesn't have to. Like, ownership could be like a Rupert Murdoch. If he doesn't want to do that, you could just say, it's my company, I don't want to do that. Like, you could do that.
But there's plenty of gay and lesbian San Jose Sharks.
Oh, there's plenty. There are plenty of gays and lesbians and transgender all over the place. But I'm saying in Northern California,
it's been accepted for way longer, and it's therefore it's become a more comfortable place for more people to live, for sure. And I know people who are who live that lifestyle that are huge Sharks fans. So I think that was a really tough thing for them to cancel it.
Yeah, I got two more small things. So tonight, first thing is Brad Marchand's off Twitter again. He does this before every playoff, so that's normal.
People are acting like it's shocking, but
I know he does this every year, folks. Every year before the playoffs, he does this because he can't trust himself, because he knows during the playoffs he would go on Twitter and start posting stuff that would be counterproductive. So that's one thing. The other thing is the Boston Bruins can clinch tonight. Mike.
The Boston Bruins can clinch the President's Trophy?
No, they can clinch the playoffs. I don't think they can do
I think they've already
Atlantic. They can do the Atlantic tonight.
I think they've already clinched the playoffs, but I think
it's the Atlantic.
Yeah, so I mean
that's pretty early.
Their season is obscene. That's how good it is. I mean, but and every time we talk about the Bruins, we have to say, okay, this season has been so fantastic and everything has gone right. And a lot of times when that happens, you sort of are lulled into a false sense of security. And if you run into a team that has a hot goaltender, this or that, you could lose in the first round. On April 17th, when the playoffs starts, what they did in the 82 games is almost meaningless, other than they got home ice advantage. So, I think they're experienced enough, and they have so many good players that it's not like they'll get complacent. But I do wonder, if a team like Pittsburgh or a team like Florida or a team like the Islanders go in the first round against Boston,
yeah,
there's no pressure on them whatsoever. Everybody's expecting Boston to win in 3. And if they win game 1, if Ilya Sorokin or Bobrovsky stand on their head and they win game 1, then something's going to start puckering up on the Bruins, and it's only natural.
Still not their fault. That they're clinching this early, but I get it. There is a downside to it for sure. But they've been there. That's the only thing. If this was a different team, I would say, all right, maybe it would affect them. But these guys have kind of been through this, so I don't think it's going to affect them.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
Answer Mike Polsky. I think there should be a Mike and Russ night, and I think X should have known that already.
Mike and Russ night? Sure, why not?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Absolutely.
The Ottawa Senators signed Tyler Klevin to an ELC. Played his college career at North Dakota.
Yep.
Second round pick, I believe. He was the player that they picked. They traded up to with Toronto, and Toronto ended up getting Niemela and Hervinen with the 2 picks that they traded, and those are 2 really good prospects. But Klevin's a good prospect too.
He is. I followed him intently from the program. He was in the U.S. program. It's funny. He's another one of these guys that has this booming shot, but he really doesn't hit it on net. So that's not his game. His game is physicality, playing tough defense, being able to skate, and he is going to help Ottawa because he is going to be like that guy for them because they do a lot of offensive defensemen, but they don't have a lot of like sure defensemen. Like everybody needs a Tyler Klevin on their team. And he's a polarizing guy. There's an analytics crowd that don't like Tyler Klevin, and they point out his inefficiencies in his passing, his zone time, other things. But then for every physical crushing hit that he'll do or good penalty killing, the team that has him is going to be like, yeah, we don't care because this is why we have him. And so we'll see. I think Ottawa will use him quickly just to kind of see what he's going to look like. Right. But he's a big, strong kid.
Oh, they signed him to the 3-year deal, and this year was one of the 3 years, so they're going to burn the first year of the deal. Yeah. The other thing, everybody was talking about Ryan Reynolds and his association with one of the groups in the bidding for the Senators. Now it comes out that apparently the highest bid was in the $900 million range, and it was a California group called the Necco Sparks Group.
Yeah, I was going to write about this earlier, and I got into something else. But yeah, this is an interesting group.
And one of the people involved in the group is The Rock.
Right.
So if they're looking for star power,
but The Rock can't skate.
Oh,
he can't. When he was
the NHL doesn't love. This is what I'll say about this.
The Tooth Fairy could have been the worst hockey movie ever.
No.
It's worse. It's worse than the John Wayne movie, Russ.
It's not.
It is.
It's not. And I have a whole write-up about the John Wayne movie on Sportsology.com. It is the worst hockey movie, but the Tooth Fairy has to be second. And I know that The Rock did not do the skating scenes. I know because I remember him talking about it in an interview. So again, it's idol of the crowds for the John Wayne one. And again, John Wayne looks so uncomfortable on skates. Like, again, it's like putting, like a cowboy on skates, like he's used to riding a horse, and all of a sudden now he's going to try and skate. The Rock is a better athlete than John Wayne, but
John Wayne was a football player, so
yeah, but don't look for him on skates.
No.
Even Franco Harris, even though he passed away recently, when we were at the Winter Classic in Pittsburgh and we were skating the media skate, I looked over at Franco because he was being interviewed, and I'm like, Franco, come on out on the ice. He goes, no way, man. That's dangerous out there. Something like that.
Yeah. I forgot my double runners that day.
Yeah. Franco used to, play on the football field and get killed there. So sometimes it's just not somebody's thing,
Yeah. No, it's really true.
But, I will say this. Mm-hmm. I know that everybody says, well, Ottawa should get the highest bid and that's who they should take. But I'm going to tell you something. The highest bid may not be as valuable as having a group with Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. Because you got to get the word out. You want publicity. You want jersey sales. You want all kinds of activity outside of the arena that you're going to eventually sell out in. You want all of that. You want that just to build a new arena, actually. So I think, the league should take that into consideration too, and so should ownership. I know they're going to be looking, again, it's going to be so much money. It's like, as long as it's close, it would benefit the league to get a more star-studded ownership, in my mind. Because look what happened with Wrexham and Ryan Reynolds. I watched that whole series. It was about a soccer team. I don't even like soccer.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
I just wonder. It's like, I mean, again, if the sale to one of these groups is tied to the building of a new arena in Ottawa, then that's good news for Sens fans and the city.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like, I mean, you would think that these groups sort of secretly are saying, well, we could move them to someplace and move them to Houston and make a ton more money than we could do in Ottawa. I just wonder if that's like a secret agenda. It's very possible.
It does sound possible. I agree with that. I don't disagree.
So GSM says Sean Farrell will soon be signed by Montreal. Farrell's an interesting one because during the pandemic, he went back to the USHL for like a third year, which nobody does. But he wanted to play, and he led the league in scoring. I think he had like 102 points, something like that. Anyhow, he's a really good skater, very good offensively. He's not the biggest guy. I think he would get a look in the NHL, but he needs to play a full season in the AHL too. He's another one of those guys that sort of has to, even though he's been in college, get a little stronger. Really make sure he's ready for the NHL, but he is a Martin St. Louis kind of player. So
yeah, I heard that.
So it'll be interesting to see Farrell in Montreal. I'm looking forward to that.
No, I totally agree. I hope. There's a couple players that Montreal has coming on that people seem to be really into. But I like him. Like a couple prospects I was talking to about. But I wanted to get into. So before we go here, we will get into the picks for tonight's Buzztron. Just making sure I have them all right here. So I pretty much tonight. If you're wondering, tonight is the night to go with the visiting teams. This is a visiting team night.
Here we go.
Mike disappears. He doesn't want to hear this.
Just had to do that.
All right. So Winnipeg winning at Anaheim. Montreal losing at Boston. Las Vegas winning at Calgary. The Rangers winning in overtime at Carolina.
That will happen. I think that's because Carolina, for some reason, wins on the road in games you don't expect them to win. So I think their Buzztron is right on the Ranger game. Yeah.
Washington winning in overtime at Chicago. Pittsburgh winning at Dallas. So this is saying the Penguins could have this back-to-back night, Colorado and Dallas. That
would be interesting.
If they do that, then that's really solidifying things. St. Louis win at Detroit. Toronto losing to at Florida in overtime.
Oh.
So that's a tough one. That's going to be this. Now Florida plays the Leafs 3 times.
I'll say this about the Leafs.
Yeah.
If they give up another 4 goals in this game, I am going to be very worried about their goaltending going down the stretch here. Listen, Mike, you can do whatever you want. They've been giving up 4 goals for a while now.
Mm-hmm. And Florida scores a ton, so this could be like a 6-5 overtime game. Minnesota winning at Philly. Seattle winning at Nashville. St. Louis winning at Detroit. St. Louis losing at Vancouver. San Jose losing at Vancouver, and Tampa Bay winning in Ottawa. So
I'm sorry, who did you say with Vegas and Calgary?
So I have it's a Vegas winning in Calgary.
Okay.
So that'd be it.
That would probably squash the Flames' hopes at that.
That's a big one. Yeah, if the Flames can win that one tonight.
Actually, I'll do headline wise. It would extinguish the Flames' hopes.
Extinguish the Flames' hopes. So right now, the way the Buzz final projected standings is based on everything happening that it says will happen, right? So when one of these, if Florida was to lose tonight, just flat out lose tonight, to Toronto, that's 2 points that it would take away from Florida in the final standings because it thinks it's going to win.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the Islanders would move into that final playoff spot. So it would be the Penguins and Islanders based on what it's saying projected wise. Yeah. So Florida.
I'm hoping that the Buzztron 10,000 is right tonight because 2 points for Florida means a greater chance of the Islanders missing the playoffs.
Oh, right. You're willing to sacrifice that?
No, I said overtime. The Leafs.
Yeah, I will answer Randy in the chat room. I think Matt Coronado has a chance to be a top 6 player. That's all.
Yeah. So that's
John Hamm is not a Canadian actor.
He's not a Canadian.
Yeah, he's from St. Louis. You idiot. Anyway, okay.
So there's 14 games tonight, guys. So yeah, there's a big night of hockey ahead. So, I mean, when you look at these games, as far as the battle, obviously the games we talked about, Calgary Vegas is a huge game for Calgary. The Rangers Carolina is an interesting one because those teams could be battling for a spot if the Rangers get hot enough that they can catch Carolina, which is possible. But it would take a lot for that to happen. Obviously, Pittsburgh, if they win tonight, that's like we saw. That's a big one. Pittsburgh and Dallas and Toronto and Florida are really playing into that big time. The Islanders aren't playing tonight, so this is a game in hand night for the Islanders, like for all these teams on the Islanders, basically. So a lot of these, so every team they're battling will have to be, So it's gonna be a good night of hockey for sure. All right, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and we will be back again tomorrow. It'll be Friday. We'll get through this whole week. It'll be pretty good. Talk to you then.